is this guy. It is clear that he's showing us some value. Currently the value added it is called text view nas, right? Halo 1 is, for instance now. But the text isn't just the value that you see on so many different things going on here. It has a weight. It has a height. It has an idea. It has a text. It has an alignment. It has a text size. And so many other things are going here. And that's an important part of dealing with programmatic objects. So in here, I want to go ahead and say from my text to you, what I'm interested in is the text value. Of it is so many different things that it is a weight and height, some of the easier ones to understand. This text alignment a little bit more complex. But for now, I'm only interested in the text value of the one that takes value of it to become this value crossline, for instance. Now, again, these are some of the things that you kind of have to follow me for now. Why do we put crossline between quotation marks is something, but I come back to it in the future. But, you know, if you're familiar with any programming language, then you know, the reason otherwise is because it's a string and we see this more and more in the future. So if I go and I'll run this application now, once my simulator loads up, we will see that text has changed into quotoning, and that's exactly what we expected to see. Now, this was one of the two ways that I suggested that we could do this. The other one was using defined view by idea. And I'm going to show you this simply because from time to time, this becomes very important. The other way of accessing something like it takes you is actually putting it into a variable. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to stay value and I'm going to call it my text view. You can call it whatever you want. I'm going to call it my text bill. And then I'm going to say this. My picture is I actually find it the view wide-eyed and the type of the object is going to be a text view. And the idea for it is this idea. If you remember, it was called my text view. Right. So I'm going to go in here and say the name for it is that I've got my text. You know, the two names might be a little bit confusing in here because we call to both of them my text view. Let's say this text view was the result of a certain operation. So I'm going to call this text view right. It doesn't matter what you really call it. What is important is this part, which is basically getting access to a text view and placing it inside a new variable. What is a variable? What is a value? Don't worry about that. Those parts are going to come back to us in the future in a few lessons from now. For now, all that matters is this. Once you put your value through finding it by the inside, something that's going to be used similar to that way that we saw before. So I can say resideXView.text and I'm going to say this text becomes, say the name of my website. For instance, and I don't really need this guy anymore. So you really don't need to include that anymore. So two different ways of accessing values from our UI component, just like what we had in here. One of them is using the directly by getting the component's name. The other one is using them by the idea. Now I want to show you a little convention that they kind of use, the squared interactivity, main activity. I'm going to have this one, which is called my text the view, and then this. Go ahead. I have another text view. I'm going to put this one would actually make this a lot larger as well. Like the last time, I'm actually going to set some constraints in here so we can see them next to each other. I'm going to change the text size. Don't worry about these settings to do them perfectly like I'm doing. I'm just doing them so we can see them a little bit easier. And I think that's about it. So one of them is called my text view. That's the other one. And then this one, the one at the bottom. I'm actually going to call it the bottom text view. And I do this convention for myself and you can actually, you know, get used to that. I find it very useful. I'm actually going to add a suffix of ieta at the end of it. There is an I do, that is that these are the kind of objects I want to get them by the command, the find, the view by idea. And these are the ones I want to get them directly. If I'm going to go get them directly, I use this combination. If I'm going to get them by the idea, for whatever reason I use this other convention. Other people have seen that they use conventions such as this one or them, takes the view, for instance. And so they basically put everything as local law cases. And they also underscores between them. This could be a good convention as well. It just gives you an indication which one of them you can access by. Yeah, Which one of them you are going to access by directly? So let's see the two of them. So this one is the one we already did and we accessed it directly. The other one, they say the result takes view, is the one we're actually going to go ahead by the then takes you idea, and then we make some changes to that. Now, you might be wondering, so which one of these two methods I should be using? Should I be using them directly like this, or should I be using the find the new idea? The rule of thumb is as much as you can. You have to get them directly if there is a situation that you cannot. And then we use this method and we will see the situations where you cannot use the direct method and we end up with this. I just want you to be familiar with both of these systems for the most part, for probably more than 75% of the situations we use this method, whatever name we gave it in here, we just go ahead and say that object and then we do whatever we want to do with it. But from time to time, we might need this one. So I want you to know the find the view by the method as well. So play around with this a little bit. Make sure that, you are the few different objects into your activity. You access them in here quickly, and once you're good and ready with that, let's move on to our next lesson. Hi, welcome back. In this system, we begin writing in code and we learn how to access various UI components from within those codes. So let's go ahead and get us started in the studio, and yet I'm going to start a new project and I'm going to call this new project just as always. All the settings, things are going to stay the same. The only thing in here, I'm going to call this one accessing UI components. Alright. So that's going to be the name of our application. Again, it doesn't matter what name you give it on. Once we're done, I'm going to finish, wait for it to load up another. My application has been created. I have the same things as before. I have the main activity file, which is where we're going to begin to work on. And I also have this resource as layout in here. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm going to go to resources, layout activity, _ main. XML, and this one I'm going to go ahead and make myself a little text. So we have a text in here, which is written. Hello. What? I don't really want that. Also, I want to show you that you have these two different views in here, and one of them is actually a blueprint of the actual view. So if you don't want to see that, you can actually go up here and say, just show me the design. So that we only see the design again. If you're in the code mode, you can press this little button to go to a design mode. And yet if you don't want to see the blueprint, you can actually go ahead and say, just show me the design. So that's what we need to work on right now. Let's go ahead in here and say in here, I'm actually going to go ahead and have a text view. I'm going to make this text view much larger, maybe something like that. Alright. And then let's go ahead and make some extra changes in here as well, for instance. And these are the things that one step at a time, you have to learn them on the fly as the course is going along. So I'm going to go up in here and search for text size, for instance. I'm going to say the text size I want to use is actually 24 SB, what a speed is. Don't worry about it. It come to it in the future. We'll have a lesson that we talk about these different formats in here. Then I'm actually going to go ahead and say give me the text alignment, put it right in the center. So that's going to be the way that my text is shown. Maybe I make it a little bit longer. Let's say the text size, I make it 32 speed. And the last thing I want to do is I want to know what is the idea of it in here. The idea of it currently is text the view. Let's go ahead and call it my text view. It doesn't matter what it is called, it matters that you know what it is called for. Now, I call it my text view, and that's all I have done in my layout editor for now. So the next thing is I'm going to head back to my main activity. And here in the code, we actually wanted to do something with that. Now, there's quite a bit of code in here already, and some of it may not make any sense to you right away. This is going to be one of those areas. They just kind of want you to follow along with me, even if it doesn't make a lot of sense. The one thing you want to know is that in your main activity file, that is a function here called onCreate. This function happens the moment the application loads. So basically an activity is a view. So the applique activity is the one that we see when the application loads, and you can have different Activities. Imagine if this is, let's say, a social media application. You might have an activity as the home activity, and then you might have an activity that's called the profile activity that shows the profile of a particular user in our application. We only have one activity that's called our main activity. Now, in the main activity, there is a function that is called onCreate. We will come back to these topics in the future. But for now, just so we get some familiarity, the onCreate is the function that runs the moment the application loads up. So whatever we're doing here is going to happen right at the moment the application is shown to the user in here. What they want to do is this. I want to go to the end of this function. I want to get myself a little bit more space in here. Still retain the curly brackets of the function. I want to do this. I want to go ahead and write my text view, and I'm going to necessarily let it autocomplete. So I'm not going to actually write everything on my own, because if you do that, it's going to actually become red and gives you an error. I want to do this. I want to write parts of it and then let it autocomplete. And once this drop-down window opens up, I'm actually going to enter. I want you to pay attention to what happens when I hit enter up here in the import. Then I do that. It automatically imports this file. It says, well, apparently there is stuff that you want to get from activity _main, so I'm going to get them for you. Let's see that once again. If I don't have that, if I go ahead and say my takes the view, then it becomes a red and tells me this is an unresolved reference. It says, I don't know what this takes. The view is so unnecessarily for everything like that. You want to make sure that you let it autocomplete and automatically adds everything that is going to need. Now, it isn't to say that if you made a mistake like this, there's no way around it. Yes. The absolute thing is, if you want, you can actually go ahead in here and manually enter them. And under the study is a smart enough that's telling you how you should do that. In this case, it says you have to press the option and enter buttons. So if you had option and enter, it automatically adds to the stuff that it needs in here. But it's a better practice that we do it on the fly. So I'm going to go in here and say, text view, on the moment the drop-down menu opens up, I'm going to hit it. I'm going to get what I want. Now, what do you want from my text? You might text you